Better Spaces is a health and happiness solution for today's hybrid workplace. My name is Dr. Paul Cacho with PAR5 Physical Therapy, and I've partnered with them to bring you an easy and educational workday session. Today's session is Get Fit for Golf in the Off-Season. A little bit about me. I received my doctorate in physical therapy from Mercy College in New York and a BS in exercise physiology from Rutgers University. I'm a board certified orthopedic clinical specialist and a Titleist Performance Institute certified level 3 golf medical professional. If you have any questions while we're going through the presentation today, feel free to use the chat. And let's pull that up right now. Here we go. All right, so this is to get fit, how to get fit for golf in the off season. So a little disclaimer, because I am a medical professional, I have to say that all the information that we're going to be going over today is for general use and general information only for the general population. It's if you're dealing with something specific in terms of pain, injury, I would say get assessed and get tested, get a physical examination by a medical professional before doing any of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So when we go through the exercises, make sure that you don't push through the pain, go gently into the stretches, hold them for longer holds, at least 30 seconds for a lot of the static holds that we'll be going over, and try and include them in your workday. The more often that you do a lot of mobility stuff, the better improvements that you'll get and the quicker you'll feel better. So golfers can benefit from a healthy and efficient body, meaning that all the parts work correctly. And if we look at this, if you've been to any of my other talks, you know by now that the body works on this alternating pattern of stability and mobility. If this pattern is disrupted, then pain or injury is a result, correct? When we're concerned about how to swing a golf club, when we're looking at golf, the most mobile parts that we need to address are your thoracic spine, the T-spine, which is the midsection, the mid-back, that needs to be mobile, and the hips. The hips need to be mobile as well. The lower back, which is in red here, we don't want that to be a mobile segment, but a lot of times people will try and rotate and make their backswing a lot bigger and rotate through the lower back, and the lower back doesn't like it. That needs to be stable. All right, so the key to building or increasing your club head speed is the kinematic sequence. And the kinematic sequence is basically allowing to accelerate through the segments of the body using the ground, so from the ground up. So we have a couple lines here. We have the pelvis, the thorax, the arm, and the club. And you can see from the gray area on the graph here, that's basically from the top of your backswing down into impact. The pelvis accelerates first, gets fast. The thorax accelerates second. The arm accelerates third, and the club accelerates the most. And you can notice at the peak of where they accelerate, they actually slow down and they transfer that speed to the next segment. So that kinematic sequence is important to building up the speed to the club. All right. So if we're going to go into a golf fitness routine for the off season, we want to make sure that we do a screen. If you don't assess, you're just guessing on what particular exercises you would most benefit from. Okay. So the first screen that we're going to do is this pelvic rotation test. Basically, you're going to get into this golf posture, put your hands on across your chest, and try and rotate the pelvis or lower body without moving the upper body. Okay, so this is what a test looks like. This is some of the errors that I find. This is the lateral motion or the upper body moves. All right, this is an illustration here of Charlie Hoffman. He's a professional golfer. This is a before and after video. Basically, before he went through the screen on the left, and then after when he was instructed on how to rotate his pelvis, and you could see the difference between the two movements. The next screen that we can do is a seated trunk rotation test, and that's sitting in a chair, both knees and feet together, and you put a club across your back and you try and rotate. Passing grade would be 45 degrees. Professional golfers get to 60 degrees. The key thing here is as you're trying to do this, your knees have to be stable. Your lower body cannot move. It's really just checking how much rotation you have through the thoracic spine. And this is a down the spine view of Billy Horschel as he's doing the rotation. You can see he can get pretty far on both degrees, and you can see that his knees don't move. So this is some of the reasons why the professionals are as good as they are, because they have elite mobility. So when we're talking about exercise, we have to kind of look and assess your hierarchy of movement. We need to be able to build this solid base and increase it and go up. So we think about our first thing is that we have to have good range of motion in our joints. We have to have good flexibility, and then we can work in strength, power, and then at the top of the pyramid is the skill. It's the actual being instructed on how to swing a golf club by a golf professional. So no matter how expensive your equipment is or how good your instructor is, you can only perform as well as your body allows you to. So the golf fitness program pretty much looks similar to a regular exercise program. There's some commonalities in that, to build a good golfer, we have to build a better athlete. And every exercise program should include these parameters, these types of exercises. You should have a push type of exercise. You should have a pull exercise. You should have a squat, a hinge, something for your core, and something to involve rotation. All right. So we're going to go through a couple of exercises that I like to do. Let's kind of get into our different camera angle here. So 3 golf fitness exercises. The first one that we're going to talk about is rotation. So let me see if I could pull up the next slide. Sorry. So this is called the open book stretch, right? You're going to be lying on your side. So I think I can get this out of the way. A lower third here. See if I can get down on the floor. Now the big thing here is that as we're trying to rotate, we want the rotation to come through the thoracic spine. We don't want the lower back to rotate. So when you do this, you have to really pull your knees in nice and tight. That flexes your lower back and locks out the lower back from rotating. Once you get that position, you have a couple options here. We can just kind of grab the rib and then pull the rib and rotate away as you turn your head. All right, repeatedly do that as you go through. The other option, if we need a little bit more movement and more force, is to kind of take the arm and then rotate up and back. The big thing that I find that when people start to include the arm, they start to just do this and move the shoulder. So if you start to just move through the shoulder, that's not rotating through your thoracic spine. So the cue that I give my clients is that your hands have to be in view of your eyes the whole time, both eyes. If you lose sight and you can't see it with one eye, then you've rotated too far through your shoulder and not enough through your thoracic spine. All right. The next one is supported pelvic rotation. So for this, kind of works into our first test here. We're going to grab a club or a stick. We're going to put this down and get into that golf posture. Try and create a little bit of downward force into the stick here so that activates the abdominals. And we try and rotate through the pelvis only without moving the upper back. Okay, so I'll see you from the back here. It's really about rotation through the hips and not through the shoulders. So rotation, 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 dissociating the lower half from the upper half. A lot of times with athletes and golfers that I see is that when they start to initiate the downswing, for example, everything goes. So they get to the top of their backswing and they just fire everything. Everything goes down. But really, we should be able to initiate a downswing through the hips first, and then the torso, and then the arms. So this drill right here, this torso rotation, the pelvic rotation, sorry, is going to help with that. All right. The next one is this hip hinge progression, right? So it also helps to groove our posture, our golf posture. If we put a stick on the small of my back, I'm going to put my right hand here so you can see. We have 3 points of contact: my pelvis, my mid-back, and my head. And then from here, I should be able to keep my spine straight and then hinge at the hip, right? Hinging at the hip. I can come a little bit lower, bending the knees a bit more, but I don't lose contact with any of those points: the hip, the mid-back, and the head. If I do, that means I've moved through my spine. A lot of times people will get into this golf posture or hip hinge and then just round the back. We don't want that. So once we get that cleared away and we know how to hip hinge, we can start to load that pattern. And the first thing I like to do is go through this deadlift. So the deadlift is basically a loaded hip hinge. I'm going to hold the weight here and I'm going to hinge at my hips, lower, and whatever you feel comfortable with. It doesn't have to go all the way to the ground. If you're tight in the back or tight in your hamstrings, you can go to mid shin, but it's basically working through the hips and getting the hips to move the weight versus your lower back. Everything should be engaged here. My chest, my abdominals, and that relationship of distance should not change. I shouldn't be opening up or closing that space. So I'm just doing that hip hinge up and down. Okay, the weight can be heavier and heavier to increase your hip hinge or your glute power. And the power in the glutes really helps with increasing power and distance in your golf swing. All right, so once we can groove that motion down, then we can work into power and speed. So the kettlebell swing is the same thing as a hip hinge, except that hip drive is going to propel the weight up. So it looks like this. We extend the hips, and then that swings the arms up. All right. I'm not raising this with my arms. If I raise this with my arms, then that's not the exercise. Then you could possibly get injured. But we really want to have the weight be light, my arms to be loose, and then the weight to be propelled up from my hips as I drive them forward. All right. The next one from that progression is to see if we can do it with a single arm. The single arm kettlebell swing allows for a little bit of rotation and unilateral weight bearing. So what does that mean? That means that I have more weight on one side and I'm swinging this weight backwards and then forwards. And then from here, if I'm loading my right hip, there's a little bit of rotation. My torso turns to the right slightly and I extend and swing this weight forward, right? The faster I extend through my hip, the higher the weight should go. All right. So those are a couple exercises that you can do to improve your strength, your speed. I got different angles on there. And I like to finish up with a little bit of a meme that I saw the other day. It basically, says that no matter how much you spend on your equipment, you might not get the results that you need.